It is my great pleasure to introduce Betty J Eadie. Betty has been a groundbreaker, a true pioneer, raising awareness about near-death experiences since 1992 with her detailed near-death experience story and her global best-selling book, Embraced by the Light. Spiritual Awakenings International has recognized Betty Eadie for her pioneering work as an honoree on the Spiritual Awakenings International Circle of Honor. Congratulations, Betty Eadie. Betty was born in Nebraska in the United States to a full-blooded Sioux Indian mother and a Scottish-Irish father, and was primarily raised on the Rosebud Indian Reservation in South Dakota. In 1973, she died following surgery and had an extraordinary near-death experience that changed her life. The remarkable success of her book, Embraced by the Light, shocked the publishing world. It sold over 20 million copies, and it stayed #1 on the prestigious New York Times bestseller list for 78 weeks. It has been translated into 48 languages. Her work is credited for having freed millions of people from the fear of death. Please welcome Betty J Eadie.
Well, thank you, Yvonne. I just your introduction is just unbelievable. Thank you so much for that. I'm blessed to be here as a speaker to join each and every one of you. Thank you. But before I begin, I want to play a short video. It's titled, "What Happens When We Die?"
Life does not end when we die. Death is a rebirth into a spirit world of light and love, a transition from the physical to the spiritual that is no more frightening or painful than passing between rooms through an open doorway. It is also a joyful homecoming to our natural home, a return to the Creator who sent us here and who welcomes us back with loving arms. I know this because on November 18th, 1973, I experienced death after hemorrhaging from surgery. The events that followed changed my life and sent me on a journey that continues today.
I have a certain knowledge that I know that I am responsible for. Since I've come back, I walk to the step of a different drummer, that's for sure. I see things differently. It's more difficult to live the life I live, knowing what I know. It's a responsibility that I take very seriously, believe me.
In November 1973, Betty J Eadie died following a routine surgery. After experiencing the most profound and detailed near-death experience ever recorded, she returned with a life-changing message. She was prompted and encouraged to share her extraordinary experience with the world. The result is the remarkable book, Embraced by the Light.
Every time and forgive me, I get weepy whenever I rededicate myself. And I do rededicate, and today's the perfect day for me to do this. I rededicate myself to the purpose of serving God in every way, any capacity. And, next year, it will be 50 years since I have been in his arms and on his path of sharing that we are not to fear, that to fear life, that he created life, that we actually decided we wanted to come here. And that sounds to those who haven't had an experience, they'd say, oh my gosh, there is no way on earth that I would have chosen to come here through the parents I came to and to the environment, to the life that I have. I wouldn't have done that. And all of what I'm saying right now is what I said to Jesus when I met him, which is extraordinary because, I have since changed from a very timid, wounded, Native young lady, I guess, girl, child. I was only 4 years old when I was placed in boarding school, taken away from my parents. And it was I can't even describe it, and I won't describe it because it's painful to even talk about. But it isn't an environment that anyone should have to live. I grew up with the feeling that I was no one to consider, that God hated me. I was often told by those at the school that I was a heathen and a sinner. I was a heathen because I was Native American and a sinner because I was part Irish. I didn't understand why Irish people were sinners until I grew up. Now I celebrate, their events as well because they're beautiful people and they're awesome. I went to Ireland just so I could meet them. I mean, I really had to during my tour. I said, I've got to go to Ireland. I've got to meet the other half of me because they're sinners and I need to talk to them. And I'm joking, of course. The most beautiful people met me there. And I loved them instantly. They were just incredible. But I, at the age of 31, died in the hospital after having a hysterectomy, and I bled to death, is what I understood later. I didn't know what was happening at the time, but I hemorrhaged. They were unable to repair that. I was fearful of death. I didn't really have a good grip on God or Jesus or anything really spiritual. I think I had moved my mind away from it. And yet at the same time, I was mesmerized by it. It's like fearing something, the boogeyman at night, and then, but you can't take your eyes off of them. You you have this imagination that you create and you're just stunned by it. So when I went to the hospital to have a surgery, first surgery ever in my life, I was 31. I was fearful. I had been in hospitals. I had babies. I had, at this point, had 7 children, 31, 7 children. You can see I was running from life. And I wanted to create my own life with a family. And I sure did that big time. So in the hospital, fearful of dying. And I remember before going in, I told my husband, I'm afraid I'm going to die because, I have my children. Everything that I created for myself was, in my estimation, perfect. And I didn't want to lose it. Did not want to lose it. I didn't have a family when I was young. So I created the perfect family. We sat at the table with napkins and tablecloths, and we ate the 7-course meals that I never had when I was a child. I was lucky to get any food at all. And so it was good to be able to provide this for my children. The home was spotless. I'm telling you, I went to the nth degree. I don't know how my husband put up with me, to be honest. Everything had to be perfect. Kids clean all the time, baths, whatever. I'm just sharing this to let you know that I loved where I was in life. I loved my husband. I loved my children. When I had too many children at such a young age, I needed a hysterectomy. So in the hospital, and husbands were not allowed. People weren't really allowed then, back in those old days. You were on your own in there, and I learned that they were short of staff and they were hustling to get everything done. That made me even more fearful. During the wee hours in the evening, or late hours in the evening, at 9:30, because I had gone in, had surgery in the hospital bed, out of recovery, but in a private, not a private room, and it was 2-bed room, but whoever was next to me, they came in and they took her away. Um, I was alone, and I have always had claustrophobia, and being alone in the dark was not a pleasant event. When all of a sudden I awoke and I felt myself dying. I could feel my legs. It started down in my feet, and I felt myself dying. And I was frightened, very frightened. The next thing I knew, I tried to ring for the nurse, but I couldn't. I couldn't reach for that little buzzer. And I popped out of my body, and I rose up to the ceiling, pancaking my body, looking down at my body. And I had worked in the hospital. I had taken classes to become an RN. So that was my goal. Never made it because of all the babies. But so I had some knowledge of the medical field. And I came down and examined myself, and I thought, oh my God, I'm dead. I'm going to cut this kind of short. If you've read Embraced by the Light, you know where I'm going with it, because I want to get to why do I continue talking about my death? And I only share it because it is not to be feared. I didn't, not for 1 second, did I feel dead, pain, or anything when I left my body. I was just up, out, and down looking. And the amazing thing I often think back on is that I felt like I was coming out of amnesia. In other words, I was leaving the world behind. It was slow at first. And then 3 beings showed up by the side of my bed, and they said they had always been with me for eternities. They said the word eternities. I didn't even know what that word meant. I had heard the word eternity. Yes. I was going to spend an eternity in hell, remember, as a kid. But eternities, I just couldn't wrap my mind around that until suddenly my brain, my spirit brain, began to absorb what they were saying. I had known these 3 beings forever. They were my best friends ever. And they said they had always been with me, and they will always be with me. And I loved them, and I did. I just loved them so much. But I went on from that experience when I was caught up into a whirlwind of beauty, is what I have to call it. It was warm. It was like, I call it a tunnel, but it was more than that, because I wasn't there alone, but I was there alone. There were others that were going there near me, but they didn't hold my attention at all. I was fascinated with what was happening to me. I went into a black place. Now, remember, I just said I am fearful of dark spaces where I can't see. I've gotten over that, but I used to be that way. This dark space to me seemed like liquid love. It just enveloped me. And I became a part of that. It was almost like a cleansing thing. So being a Catholic, I thought, well, this must be purgatory or whatever. I did have that thought. But I thought, no, purgatory to me was always a place where you're condemned. Now, I don't understand it. So if you're Catholic, forgive me. I didn't understand any of that. I just thought of purgatory of being away from anything good. And I thought my next step is surely hell. But if I never went on further from this experience to have witnessed the beauty of heaven, I would have wanted to stay in this liquid love forever. That is how wonderful that love was. Then a pinpoint of light came out of the darkness, and it was like a searchlight, very bright. And it was like seeking something. And all of a sudden it sought me and found me and drew me into it. My spirit just soared into this light, which is so brilliant, beyond 1,000 suns, definitely beyond that, but not hot. But it was beautiful. And as I looked into this light, it broadened and became instead of a light, it became, and it was like a white tunnel, perfectly to taking me wherever it was. And then I saw at the very end a figure standing in the light. Well, he wasn't in the light, he was the light. But it was so brilliant and bright. And as I approached and came closer, now this is really going to choke me up because I can't talk about my experience without reliving it. As I got closer, just like the three at the side of my bed, I knew this man. And I knew now that I had known him for eternities. And with every bit of energy that I had at that time, I ran to him. These are human words, but I don't know how to explain it. I ran to him. And his arms came out like this. And as they came out, there was golden halo, like golden. It was all golden. And he held his arms out, and then he swooped me in to him like this, inside of that goldenness. And I embraced him, and he embraced me. And I said, I never, ever want to leave you again. Never. Why did you send me there? I'll never go back. Never, never, ever. I'm done with her. And I say that feeling somewhat embarrassed because that was Jesus, for goodness sakes. A man of pure love, someone I knew. And I would never, ever, ever have imagined that I knew him, much less was in his presence and in his embrace. Therefore, I titled my book, Embraced by the Light. He is light, and light is knowledge. And when you're in the presence of Jesus, in the presence of knowledge, you begin to know everything. Your senses open and you remember. I recalled so many things that I wrote about in the book, and some things I didn't write about because of publishing. I had to keep the pages down to 147 pages. You know how challenging that is for someone that is bursting with all this knowledge and thoughts that you want to share to the world, because I grew up with fear, in fear. I grew up low self-esteem, low self-worth. And there are so many out there struggling the same. So I went on to, Jesus said that he wanted me to know everything. And he summoned some, they weren't angels with wings or anything like that. They were just perfect people that I call guides. And he summoned these ladies over and he said, show her everything she wants to know. Now, in that moment, in his words, I knew that we will experience only what we allow or we desire. We take with us when we die, we take with us our already growth, our knowledge, our perceptions, our whatever it is that we will be able to know our perception, how we perceive things. And so I understood that I wanted to know everything that I had been told about in the Bible that frightened me. That was my interest. I wanted to know anything that was exciting in heaven, that I just wanted to know it all. In fact, Jesus laughed at me because he said, "You have the most inquisitive mind." He said, "You're precious." I had never been called precious in my life, for goodness sakes. Me, precious, I type of person that speaks her mind. Because of my hurt, I didn't really care if I hurt others back. And very blunt. I still am in a way. But to be precious, what does that mean to Jesus? I don't know. But they did take me to the garden and told me to explore it. They know I love being out in the wilderness. I've always loved to hike out in, and as I got older, I'd love to hunt, fish. I'm an outdoors person. But they took me into the garden, which I found that was actually answering a lot of my questions. Because in church, they always said that when we go to heaven, we're going to sing praises unto the Lord. And the songs they sang, I didn't like. Most of them said that I was a sinner. Back to, I'm sinning again. I didn't want to ever hear that again. And how we sing to God. I couldn't imagine an egotistical God. When I was in the garden, there was a waterfall that gave me the answer. And coming down from this huge, sort of like the great waterfalls that we have here on Earth, Niagara Falls always reminds me somewhat of it, except it's not as natural looking as it was in heaven. But as the water cascaded down, each droplet was singing praises to God. And I thought, how are they singing praises to God? And every thought I had was answered by its mere existence. Believe that. By its mere existence. Because we have energy in us. And as we create in us the love and joy of life, our energy expands. And I was shown how my energy was so narrow when I first arrived there. Now I'm already expanding. And the more I could expand that energy, the more that energy could reach out and grab these ideas and thoughts, and you awaken to eternities past. And that was what was happening to me, just because of the waterfalls. But I went on to smell a rose, as I wrote in my book, because I love flowers. And roses and daisies were, there was a field of daisies, and of course right there were roses, and just every flower imaginable, and even flowers you wouldn't even recognize here on Earth. You can't. I went over to the flower and cupped it in my hands and to smell its fragrance. As I did that, that rose felt my love and drew me into it. Now, whether it expanded to become enormous to take my spirit self in, and or I shrunk, but it felt to me that it grew because of my love for it. And everything grows because of love. Everything. When we love, that energy grows that person we love. And so we never let go of it, even though they have give us challenging moments, never let go of love. And I was able to go into the rose, into the very bottom, down through the stem. I remember going down and just feeling this love, and the fragrance was extraordinary, and coming back out. I could enjoy, I was like a kid in a candy shop, running around, just enjoying everything that they would allow me to enjoy. When I came out of the rose, I remember kneeling in front of the rose, just kneeling and feeling the presence of God in a beautiful way. And it was just reverent. It was just beautiful, unimaginable, actually. I think of that whenever I feel like I need an extra shot in the arm or something. I think, okay, Betty, you were a part of a rose. Come on now, brighten up a little bit, cheer up. You had the fragrance right there with you, and every now and then. And I'm sure most of the near-death experiencers will know this as well. All of a sudden, when you're having a day that just isn't perfect, something will come back that will brighten your day like a fragrance of a flower. And when that happens, I know you have been in that garden as well, even though you don't remember it, because it wasn't meant for all of us to remember all the details. I was told that as time went on, more would be added to my memory as I need. So it was like a need to know basis. It would be downloaded because we have a matrix around this world, this earth. And the energy in that matrix, and this is part of what carries our prayers wherever we want them to go, our loving thoughts. When you pray for someone else, you think, how does that connect? Through the matrix. This is why I love the movie The Matrix. It goes into that energy field and travels right where that person, you don't even have to know where they are. The matrix knows. And so it's just incredible. I mean, it's just really wonderful. And you know, as I live longer, I feel more knowledge has come to me because we have electronics. I mean, back when I had my experience, we didn't have computers. And yet I was taken to the computer room in heaven. I saw it. My husband worked in that field. He was an analysis of computers or whatnot for the Boeing company. That was his specialty. So he knew of the clunky mammoth computers that they had way back in the storerooms. But they kept all locked up and everything sealed away. So when I came back and told him that I saw the computers in heaven and explained to him what I saw, he says, that'll never happen. Well, guess what? Those computers had liquid screens. And I played with them. They allowed me to touch it. You just like we have now. We didn't have touch screens. They had those in heaven back in 1973 when I had my experience. And they said that all information, all knowledge, all new creation is inspired and given to those who are open to receive it. And then they take what they have been inspired and they use their own creation to create it. And that's loved by God. Why? Because I was told that we are co-creators with him. And it brings him joy that we create. And we learn through the creation what works and what will not work. And he loves that as well. Wow. I mean, it just blew my husband away. He was a Southern Baptist. And he says, honey, don't share this with anyone. He said, don't. He says that you're going to have people after you, especially from the Baptist church. And he said, I don't want you to get hurt. I said, what if I told you that God told me I had to? He says, oh no, please don't tell anyone that. So right now, publicly, I'm going to tell you, I was sent back to write Embraced by the Light. I had never written a thing in my life, ever. But I would be given the time when it was to be written. And it was 19 years after I returned that I was told it was time to write Embraced. I was given the number of pages, and what to leave in, what to take out. It was amazing. And, I am right now working to get the movie going for Embraced. I have worked with people since its onset, actually, back in 1993. It was amazing that Hollywood wanted to have me die on a motorcycle, something exciting instead of a hysterectomy. I said, I can't do that. I can't. They says, you've got to make this a little bit more exciting. I said, oh my God, I died. I came back. How much more exciting can you get? My life changed. I changed. I am not the same person I was. Yes, somewhat, but not exactly. I am driven, compelled to share what God sent me back. And I said to Jesus, as I was getting ready, and I'm cutting through a lot of things because I know my time is somewhat coming short, and I could talk about this forever and ever. But I said, Jesus, how on earth am I going to go back and tell people what I experienced, much less tell them that there is no hell? He said something so clear as a mother of 7. He said, as a loving mother of children, if they were to do something wrong, would you throw them into a pit of fire? Would you throw them into outer darkness? In other words, what would be your punishment? And I said, no, I wouldn't. I don't care what they do. I couldn't. I love them. He said, how much greater is God's love than yours? How much greater? I said, well, that's a no-brainer. I love, but my love is full of condition. He says, God's love is unconditional for all. You are all there. Each and every one of you chose. It's like going to a car lot and choosing a vehicle to buy. You chose what you wanted to drive. You chose the speed you wanted. Some wanted, I don't know, Jaguar. Some wanted, Volkswagen. He said, everyone chose. Why did they choose? Why did they choose? I said. He said, they chose because no one is at the same level here. We are at various levels of spiritual growth in heaven. And so we come here to practice what we've already learned. Some are great teachers. Some are perpetual students. They're just challenged, but they need teachers. And so you all come down expecting, and you're told there that you're equal. You're not equal. This is why you must learn to love one another and forgive each other, because you're not equal. If you are blessed and you chose a Mercedes and you are blessed, you must take what you were blessed with and share it. It's all about other people. It's not about you in that sense, not on earth. You're there in classrooms of knowledge to gain knowledge. That's what you're there for. And so that saying, when the student's ready, the teacher appears, is absolutely true. And we come down in groups, even in partnerships. They showed me a drunken bum on the street, and they said, that drunken bum is serving only one person here. He came, well, look at what he had to do to become an alcoholic and lay on a street drunk. But he and his soul friend in heaven, the guy came down because he was going to become an attorney and he was going to serve a lot of people in a different way. But he wanted to serve the alcoholic people. So the drunken bum, his soulmate in heaven, bright and shiny spirit, he says, I'll go down, I'll be a reminder to you. And so there he laid on the street. Maybe years, we don't know how long, they didn't tell me. But the attorney went to get some Starbucks. This is in Seattle that I saw them. And was walking down the street to get a coffee shop. I don't think they had Starbucks at the time. I don't know. He went to get coffee. And there lay this man on the ground. And as he walked by him, their eyes connected. And he got what I call spirit sparks. It's when your eyes connect with someone and all of a sudden goosebumps rise up. You get this spark in you and you go, oh my God, I know that person. Something is transmitted. Well, what's transmitted to this attorney was the promise that his friend made. And his friend promised that he would remind him to be compassionate and remind him of his mission, his purpose. And I said, when my guides actually showed me that, I said, I can't believe that. And he says, we're going to take him out of his body temporarily so you can see his spirit. I says, okay. I looked down at mine. My little spirit was just, I always say 3 watts because under 7 watts. I think 7 watts is a little nightlight that you plug in, 7 or 9. I was smaller than that. That equals your knowledge and your spirit, how spiritual you are, I guess. So they took him out of his body, and my gosh, I said, his spirit is magnificent, but he's a drunken old bum. And they said, no, he's not. No, he's not. This is why you cannot judge another soul, nor can you judge their purpose on earth. You can't judge. Yvonne, I didn't keep track of the time. You are going to have to warn me when my time is up because I just love to share. That's my job.
I will tell you, yes.
Okay. They sent me back to do it and they said, I said to Jesus, the moment, so if I die while I'm sitting here, you'll understand. Don't weep for me. But I said, well, my purpose is complete. I want to come back to be here with you. And I says, promise me, or I'm not going back. I mean, I was that stubborn. He says, I promise you, the moment your mission is complete, I'll take you home. Now, I've reflected on that too, because I'm not exactly sure what part of heaven I was in. Because heaven isn't just heaven. There are many facets, many places in heaven. When we're told in the Bible that God has prepared a home for us, just imagine we're not all living in the same home, right? We're all at various levels of understanding of spiritual growth. We go to where we are comfortable, is what I was told. So we want to grow our spirit. We want to acquire as many of the attributes of God that we can acquire so we can be with him. You will be with him if you are comfortable in his presence. Now, how do you become comfortable in the presence of God? Except for to acquire his attributes. and that is love. Above all else, Jesus said, love one another. And if you love one another, all else will be fine. Love. God is love. So his attributes mean, if we acquire his attributes, that means we become love. And like attracts like. His love is going to draw us to him, and we will feel comfortable with that. Was I comfortable in the presence of Jesus? You know what? Yes, I lived in ignorance. And those who had lived in ignorance, they still did loving things. Because I look back and over my youth, and I sympathized with people who lived like I did as a child. Most of the young people I grew up with died in their 40s. They're gone. Either alcohol, drugs, murder. They didn't feel good. Is God going to blame them for that? Not at all. Are they teachers or are they students? I would say they were teachers. They are teaching us what was wrong in our world back then. Someone had to do it, just like the Jews that gave their lives. I was told that they were sacrificial lambs, because I asked about that, the Holocaust. I said, I can't believe that you would allow that. He says, oh, but they chose it. They were sacrificial lambs. You grow from pain. You grow from experiences that hurt. Everything is for a purpose, and God allows that to happen because we asked him to allow us to grow while we're down there, allow us experiences. We want to do this. Don't come and rescue me every time. How am I going to learn? And actually Jesus gave me a story that went with it. He said, it'd be like a father, growing up a son, and the son says, Dad, I'm 21, I need to be on my own. He says, yes, you do, son. I mean, I really need to be on my own. So let me get my own apartment and be there. And I don't want drive-bys. Don't drive by and check on me all the time. Don't call me. I might be busy. Let me call you. And the loving Father said, I will do that. I will do that. And so, but the loving Father said, but son, if you ever need me, call home. Call home. I'll be there for you in a minute. I'm going to give you your freedom, but I need you to give me your promise to call home. Wow, my spirit brothers and sisters, we are given the power of prayer so that we will call home. When you need something, want something, even if it's just comfort, you're aching in pain or whatever, call home. There is something in the power of his love that is so healing. Call home. I was shown prayers and how they come up to God in heaven. And it was amazing. The prayers of mothers and caregivers, the love from people who love. They were the brightest beams ever. Then there were little prayers that didn't quite make it. And I says, what are those prayers? He says, prayers of repetition. Prayers from the heart, from love. Those are the prayers that are heard first by God. Prayers of repetition is saying the same thing over and over from your head, not from your heart. Pray from your heart. that is the nurturing love that a mother's prayers come from the heart. So we are not without hope. We are here as students on earth. We are going to get through this together. We are going to join each other in heaven as brothers and sisters in the spirit. There is no black, white, brown people up there. There are spirit beings. We're going to forgive those who are rebellious because that's what they know. I am of the opinion that everyone gets up in the morning to do the best they can do. And you know what? If they don't live up to our expectations, why should they? They have their own. That's all they know. That's all they know. So when they're terrorizing our streets, when people of my ethnicity have become alcoholics and drug addicts, you think they wanted to do that? They did it because that's where they were driven towards. They did it because they're in pain and they're in suffering. I think our prisons are filled with those type of people. And this is why in the Bible it says that we are to visit them. The only love they may get is from us. I was blessed a few years back to become a spiritual advisor in the prison in Texas to a young man that actually was a murderer. I'll never forget that experience. And the one thing, blessing, I felt that was greater than just about anything else was the prison was filled with embraced by the light. Yes. When the warden found out that I was coming to be a spiritual advisor, he took me aside, chastising me. I said, "Warden, these men need to feel some love. And I'm not going to quit doing what I'm doing just because you think I should." He says, "I'm not going to make it easy on you either." So every time I came in, I basically had to be stripped down and searched. I came in with my Bible because I wanted to read scripture that was wonderful and enlightening, and they would not let me take my Bible in. No Bibles are allowed. And I says, "Why not?" "Well," they says, "we allow 7 Bibles in, and 7 Bibles have already come in, and you're not allowed to take yours in. Yours would be 8. I said, "You know what? I have the scriptures in my head, so I'm going to take those in. What do you think about that?" So that's what I did. I had to memorize some scriptures fast and apologize if I was just paraphrasing. But the best gift that I had, that and when I went in, I could hear them. These were men that were isolated, and yet they would bang on the side of their bars with their cups to cheer me on. They knew I was there, and they wanted me to know that they recognized and that they had read Embraced by Light. The young man that I was serving had read Embrace, and he had read it like I don't know how many years back, but he gave his heart to God. He turned over his ways. He admitted that what he did it when he was on drugs. He says, "I just don't want to hurt anyone when I leave." And he said, "I have been promising these guards that when I leave, I'm going to take a couple of them down with me." He was a big man, really big. And of course, they let him exercise and lift weights. So they're stronger than the guards. I don't get it. Doesn't make any sense. I said, "I don't want you to do any of that. I want you to enter heaven peacefully and loving. So I worked with him for 2 years when they took him to put him to death. He says, "Betty, you've changed my life." I wish no one harm or pain. I said, when you walk, they come and they walk them down this long hall that makes all kinds of noise. It's psychologically horrid to hear the clanging of the chains and et cetera, et cetera. And I told him, I says, that's going to happen. But I want you to imagine and visualize the bells and chimes in heaven instead. Feel calm and restful and peaceful and know that God, you're just around the corner from being with him. Anyway, he did all of that. He says, I can do that if you're looking through the glass into my eyes. I can do it, Betty. And so when I went out and went into the room where they allow you to stand behind the windows, they wheeled him in and brought him in, and he laid on this bed. And I had to keep my calm. And of course, I'd been praying for this for a long time, that God, because I'm emotional, especially when it comes to love. And I had learned to love this man. I learned why he became the person he became and why he did this. It wasn't in a sound mind, he was on drugs. But he was willing to die for it. They stretched him out on the bed, strapped him in, and his eyes were on my eyes. They never left. And I just stood there and watched him, staring in his eyes, every now and then blowing him a kiss, just trying to look calm when I really wanted to run out of there screaming. They did put him to death. I had promised him that he had 2 children. I would stay in connection with his children. And I did, and I kept that promise. They just take him out and cremate him. Children, he didn't have any money. Children didn't have any money. So I paid for him to be in the mortuary so that they could have visitations. Otherwise, I could not get charge of the body. They allowed me that, which I thought was pretty kind. So what I'm saying is, are we our brother's keepers? Yes. I feel that our lives be so much better if we looked at each other with love and forgiveness and not allow anyone to hurt or harm you or anyone else. I don't agree to that at all. I would be the first one to jump up and hurt someone else if they hurt anyone that loved And I think of Jesus in a temple when he threw everybody out when they were gambling in the temple. He was a man of strength. He was a man, a determined man. Take care of business. And I believe that. But your first business on earth is to love. And so I challenge each and every one, love. Love, love, love. Let's change our world, and we can do that by positive thinking, and we can do that by, faith without works is dead, definitely. Faith is an action word. You can say, I have faith in God. I have faith in this world. I have faith in America. I have faith in the United States and all the countries. I have faith in my country, and do nothing. What good is your faith? You grow your faith by putting it to work. And some people have said, well, Betty, I can't do anything. I'm crippled. I'm at home. You know what? You're in a perfect spot. You're home. You can pray. Prayers are the most powerful thing we have. You can pray. And it doesn't have to be a form prayer. The better you pray from your heart, that's what it is. Sometimes I just say, Heavenly Father, I know that you understand what's going on here. I don't. Help me to understand that. And that's a prayer. That's calling home. When you call home or call your children or whatever, you don't go through a ritual, they would hang up on you. Say, hey, that's too long. You're starting to say, you're doing that again. Let's not talk about the weather. Get to the point. I want to know what's going on inside you. And that is the perfect prayer. God bless you, each and every one of you.
Thank you, Betty. That was absolutely inspirational. We're actually going to do the question and answers now. So I'm going to read you some of the questions. And if people have other questions you'd like to put into the chat, please write them in now and I will ask Betty. So Betty, I was so moved so many times. I just have to say personally, that was just really, really heart-touching and inspirational. Thank you. We have a question here in the chat from Bill. And he says, how does one sense when we have the materialization of the creativity and motion that you were describing?
How do we sense it?
Yes. How do we know? Oops.
It's always through your heart. You sense and feel. Your spirit knows. So many times we deny that. Some people say your gut reaction. Some people will deny it because they don't trust it. Start trusting that inner feeling in your heart, that gut reaction, and until you can rely upon it. It's that simple, actually. And people call it different things. Maybe they'll say they have the whispering of God, or they hear a voice. We hear. We actually are all so talented, and each in a different way. I remember, reading the Bible where Jesus was approached and said, "You heal people, but you heal them in a different way. One, you put mud in their eyes," and I'm paraphrasing. Another, you do this, that, or the other. In other words, his rituals change per person, whatever's going on. And he said to that person that was asking, "Is it easier for me to say, 'Thy sins be forgiven thee'?" Now listen to what he just said. You just opened up this whole new realm of things. So what and yet I'll stick to the subject here. So Jesus uses what we can understand. Some people have to have something physical, like a medicine or a rub on the back, or something, in order to heal. Other people have to have something more. They're more mental in something. They want to hear a word said. You could say, a doctor could say, "You're really healthy," and that word "healthy" inspires them. They feel good. And so we are all approached in different ways. So there's no one way, not one. It depends if we're all individuals, and we're each going to have our special way to be approached, or our special way of understanding. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Betty.
Mhm.
We have another question from Bill, and this one's about time. He said, what is the comparison between clock time and creative time and divine time?
Well, it goes back to question number one. When you are having fun, time flies. When you're bored, time drags. And yet the clock still ticks the same and is still, perfectly fine. So everything is so personal. So I think he'd have to answer his own question.
We have another interesting question from Pierre. Is how do you deal with hellish near-death experiences? Why do you think some people have a hellish experience?
I'm so glad that he asked that question, because obviously, because of my experience and what I share, people who have been brought up to believe in the hellfire, the all the terrible things, even, so it just depends on what you were taught. That becomes a part of your structure, your belief system. And when we die, we take with us what we believe. So if you believe that hell is Satan with a pitchfork and boulders of rock and all aflamed, and he's getting ready to stick you and throw you into it, you're going to believe that. You believe that. That is what you believe. You are expecting it. If you believe that snakes and whatnot are going to get you, you're going to believe that. You're creating your own hell. We are co-creators with God. Stop creating this horrible thing for it to happen to you. Now, people will say, Betty, it's all in the Bible. Yeah, it's all in the Bible because that's what they believe. The writers of the Bible interpreted the hellish events in our life to be horrible. It's just like, I raised my kids. How many times did I say to them, I created something in their mind just to make them stop, doing it. And then I learned better. You don't do that. You just don't. You tell them, if you don't stop that, I'm gonna beat you until you're bleeding or whatever. People do that. I didn't say that, but I've heard people say that. You're gonna, or people even threaten each other. I'm gonna kick something out of you. These are just statements that people make to show you the worst thing that can happen to you. And so that's my take and my stance on that. I am not going to create a hell. I was on an Oprah show and some woman said, someone's got to go to hell. Yeah. And I shouldn't have said this, but sometimes I get a little bit out of hand. I said, you volunteer? She was silent. Because if you feel like someone has to go to hell, that puts you there. That puts you there. You'd want to do unto others as you would have done unto you. That is there's a universal law that covers all of that. So if you want if you want to go to hell, tell someone else to go to hell. That will give you the ticket. Okay. So yeah. So that's my stance. That's my take. That's what I'm going to go to my death with, because Jesus said, and God's love is greater than that, and it's unconditional. The only thing that we do to ourselves is create our spot in heaven. We're creating it. I'm going to create everything good. I want to go back to that garden. I want to be with Jesus. So I hope I didn't shortchange myself. I hope I do. I think, okay, where was he exactly? Because it was like going into a vestibule of heaven. Because heaven is so vast. Vast. So, but so I'm just doing the best I can to be a messenger, and that's it. And I stick to what I experience. I don't go outside of my experience. I have heard other near-death experiences, but I don't read other people's books. I try to stay narrow in my walk, and that's it. And that's hard. It's hard to do. I hear their stories, but I don't want to sink into their book and make that a part of what I've experienced, which the brain has it can do that to some people. So, any other question?
Yes, indeed. Allison is asking, how can I find my mission? How do I know what I am supposed to accomplish?
You just live your life and it will be revealed to you. And when you wake up in the morning and it changes, you might go this way for a while. And this is what I learned is picking up tools. In life, we have to, well, if you want to become a doctor, for instance, you have to learn, you have to study, you have to learn. And sometimes learning all the details it's tiring, cumbersome, and whatever. No matter what trade you have to go through, you have to pick up the tools. And so you might want to, and most of you search your life, think back. Something you really wanted eventually came to you because you had all the tools to do that or to experience that. And so that's basically it. I mean, I could go on more and more on that one, but everything is about picking up the tools. It's about educating yourself. And I could tell you how I've educated myself being an author. And I could go teach a class on being an author and what that means and what you have to do to go through getting your book out there and et cetera, et cetera. I actually have spoken at to authors, but also this book was meant to be read. And I was told by Jesus that not to worry about how many books I sold or not to worry about who would listen to me, but that the hearts of those who are prepared, and again, we prepare ourselves for greater knowledge through all the experiences. Some of us just simply don't want to learn. We don't want to budge. We're comfortable where we are. But as you expand your mind, as you are prepared, if you seek that, the verse right after I came back, was reading the Bible. I thought, all right, I got to understand how much of this is in the Bible. I need someone to talk to. And I didn't have anyone. There was no one who understood what I had experienced. But in the Bible, it says, knock, seek, and ye shall find. What does that mean? Knock. That means you've got to be in action. You've got to put forth some effort. Knocking, you got to go like this. That means action. Seeking, that means you got to read the book, or if you're reading a book, or you've got to be involved in it. And then you'll find, the door will be opened up. Well, the door will open up. It doesn't mean you have flood of all the 100% knowledge of everything. You're going to have more options. And so that's what we're here for, just to seek, learn, and whatnot. See how I digress? I'm so sorry.
We have lots and lots of questions, but we only have time for one more.
Okay.
So this will be the last question.
Right.
And Tim asked this question. He says, your near-death experience gave you such conviction and assurance. What about for those of us who have not had such an experience? How can we feel that assurance too?
I don't know that you were meant to. There are no mistakes. Actually, I think, I don't know how I was prepared for this. As a child, I must have been somewhat prepared. I think all that I experienced as a child was basically, I didn't trust anyone, but I trusted myself because I wanted that so much I became it. I'm very direct, forward. I'm transparent, I guess, is what I feel. I like transparency. It bothers me when someone is outside of that. So coming forward with Embraced by the Light, just think of what I had to go through, and I'll spare you all the details. I have been called everything under the sun, believe me. Because a lot of people, it was hurting their faith, or it was hurting them somewhere or the other. I spoke in front of 450 pastors, preachers, and teachers and whatnot who were trying to shoot down Embraced by the Light. God was with me that day. But the confidence I have was earned. Okay, we don't just gain something. You earn it. You live it. You let it become a part of you. Now, I had some confidence when I was younger, before my near-death experience. But the magic that happened, according to my husband, he says, Betty, you came back someone different. I says, how's that? He said, you've always been timid. Not that you haven't been, you never wanted to hurt anyone, but he says, you were timid. Like, you weren't self-assured. But Jesus told me as I was coming back to earth, he said that he would have to tweak me a little bit, because it wasn't good to have too much spirituality. I had to have more, he said, humanness. I'd never heard of that word before. I don't even know if it is a word. He said I needed to have extra dose of humanness. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I did study after I came back what dose meant. Because I thought as a cook, it meant a dollop. You know how you just take a spoon and get a dollop of this and smack it into your pot. It is a precise measurement. It is not a dollop. So what Jesus was telling me is I needed a precise measurement of humanness and balance of between the spiritual and the human person that I was. I did change. I learned that, for one thing, I shake hands like a man does. I can't tell. The only reason I know is because they say, people that shook my hand, they go, oh my gosh, you got a grip. Not squeezing them. Yeah. But just being the special person that I was created for this purpose. When you are ready to serve your mission, keep in contact with the Lord. Pray and say, prepare me for it. I want to do it. Open the door. I'll walk through. Whatever. That gives you confidence. When you know that you are walking in the light of God, when you are doing His will, then you know that you can be confident in everything you do. And that's where I am. Plus, you take a deep breath. What do I care? I know I'm going back to heaven. And that is the best place ever to be. So I put up with everyone else if they put up with me, and we're good. Okay. This is a mission I have to fulfill. Yeah.
Thank you, Betty.
Yeah.
That was an absolutely amazing, just absolutely wonderful talk. Thank you so very, very, very much.
Thank you.
It was just wonderful.